Hey folks, Joe Morris with Answers Heaven Speaks. This will be our last show for 2022, and boy, we're going to go out with a bang with this one. I mean, preparing for this show today was like reading a spy novel. Just to give you a heads up, we are still down here in Puerto Vallarta. Let me turn this around so you can see where I'm at. Yeah, we're in Puerto Vallarta in Jalisco, Mexico. Is that thing turning? Yeah, it's turning. So anyway, that's downtown Puerto Vallarta over there. If you watched the show yesterday, I kind of showed this as well. Those are the Sierra Madre Mountains. And there's a little bit of clouds today. But you know what? I always find that we always get sprinkles or a little bit of rain on New Year's Eve, which is absolutely crazy. So anyway, that's Bay of Banderas out there. And you can see down there the pool. And Sunscape Resort is right over there. That's the bay, of course. And the mountains are up over there. But anyway, we want to get into this story because, let me turn this back around. I want to get into this story because I may run just a little bit long today, especially if Marisa's going to come in and channel. We found out yesterday because I had done some reading of the book of Matthew, because I was showing that the whole Last Supper and leading up to the arrest of Jesus was kind of mixed up with the time of Jesus being in Lazarus, with Lazarus, raising Lazarus from the dead. And the Urantia book gives us so much of a backstory, so much of a backstory. We have been spending maybe 2 months, maybe more, 2.5 months, 3 months, whatever, just going over Jesus' ministry. It's just absolutely amazing. And we have gotten to the point now where it's crazy time, folks. It's crazy time. And Jesus is finally going to be arrested. We've known for a long time that there's been a warrant out for his arrest. And he's been kind of avoiding the situation. He even kind of snubbed his nose at all the elites and went into Jerusalem and went into the temple square and just ripped the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Sanhedrin and the chief priests and the elites and the scribes, just telling them they were all just children of the devil. Right there. They probably should have arrested him right then and there. And then he goes back in the next day and does some more. And that's when all the tables got overturned from the money changers and all the artisans and the business people, all their whatever got spilled over. All the animals that were there for the Passover were released from their pens by Jesus. And really, most people would have thought, well, that's when he's going to get arrested, because he's really, really just, he's done a number on everybody. But he's always trying to do is teach the kingdom of God. And up to this point, he has never questioned his humanity. Never questioned his humanity. It was always, I'm going to do the will of the Father. I am going to do the will of the Father, and that's it. Even when universe personalities would come before him up on the mountaintops, and they had suggestions for him, he still said, I'm going to do what the Father has willed me to do. But today we're going to see a little bit different side of Jesus, because he has now left the table at the Last Supper up at John Mark's father's house, up in the upper chamber, and he's given last words of comfort to his apostles. And now they have just headed back to their camp at Gethsemane, and you're going to find that Judas had brought the guards up to arrest him while he was at John Mark's house, and he just had a handful of guards, maybe 5-10 guards, something like that with him. But Judas missed him by about 15 minutes. So Judas has to go back. He has to go back into Jerusalem. He has to go back in, and now he has to plead to Pilate for more guards, some Roman guards. And nobody likes Judas. They know he's being a betrayer, even though all these elites wanted to arrest Jesus. They still looked at Judas as a betrayer, as a treasonous person. And nobody likes that. It doesn't matter which side you're on. Nobody likes a person like that. But we'll get into more of that story later. But right now they have gone back to their camp at Gethsemane, and we're going to get into the story. He has told his apostles to go ahead and go back to bed, go to sleep, and they've gone off to their tents. And let me see if we can get this up here. And now Jesus has asked John, James, and Peter to go with him because he's going to go off and talk to the Father. And he would like to have that company with him. Not as guards, because he doesn't feel like he needs any guards. He doesn't need them to carry swords or anything like that. But those guys are going to get ready. They're going to fight. They're going to fight to the end. They want to fight to the end. But Jesus can't have that happen. He's just spent the last 2.5, 3 years teaching them how to go out and teach once he is gone. And he's made it clear he's going to be arrested, he's going to be killed, he's going to resurrect again, and he's going to come back, see him for a short while, he's going to bring in the Spirit of truth. But they don't understand all that stuff, so they're still willing to go down to the end, fighting till the end. And so let's get right into this story because it may run a little bit long, but it's so intriguing. It's just very, very intriguing. Now, John Mark and David Zebedee headed up the messenger corps and sort of was like the guards for Jesus, guards for the apostles. John Mark was the young gopher, and it was his parents that allowed him to have that Last Supper in their house. And so they're going to hang in there with him. And so then, as he prepared to go on watch by the upper trail, David, they're heading on out. Jesus is heading out, and all the apostles are really tired. So they go off, like I say, to their tents, and they're going to go to sleep, but they're very worried. They're really kind of pissed off because now everybody knows that Judas has been the betrayer. He never came back to the Last Supper, and now they've gone back to their camp. He's not there either. So they've all come to the conclusion that Judas has become the betrayer. And Jesus wants to leave the camp, just go up the hill, Mount Olivet, a little bit higher, up to a quiet place where he can commune with the Father. But you're going to see, he falls in love with his humanity, finally, at long last. And even Marisa and I, we've had sessions where Michael had actually been Adam at one time, and Adam fell because he fell in love with his humanity. But that's another story for another time. So let's just get right into this. And then as he prepared to go on watch by the upper trail, David said to Jesus, Master, I sent for your family, and I have word by a messenger that they are tonight in Jericho. Because he had sent for his parents and didn't tell Jesus. Now he's finally telling Jesus that his family's on its way. And they will be here early tomorrow, forenoon, since it would be dangerous for them to come up the bloody way by night. And Jesus, looking down upon David, only said, Let it be so, David, let it be so. And when David had gone up on Olivet, John Mark took up his vigil near the road which ran by the brook down to Jerusalem. And John would have remained at his post, but for his great desire to be near Jesus and to know what was going on, shortly after David left him, and when John Mark observed Jesus withdraw with Peter, James, and John into a nearby ravine, he was so overcome with combined devotion and curiosity that he forsook his sentinel post and followed after them. And then hiding himself in the bushes, from which place he saw and overheard all that transpired during those last moments in the garden, and just before Judas and the armed guards appeared to arrest Jesus. Which means John Mark must have seen the angel appear, while, as you'll see, Peter, James, and John, they're just tired and they fall asleep. Jesus even says, can't you guys even stay awake for a little while? We'll get into that. So while all this was in progress at the Master's camp, Judas Iscariot was in conference with the captain of the temple guards, who had assembled his men preparatory to setting out. under the leadership of Judas, the betrayer, to arrest Jesus. Now they're alone in Gethsemane, and after all was still and quiet about the camp, Jesus, taking Peter, James, and John, went a short way up a nearby ravine where he had often before gone to pray and to commune. And the three apostles could not help recognizing that he was grievously oppressed. Never before had they observed their master to be so heavy laden and sorrowful. I mean, you ever seen him like this? And Jesus is feeling his humanity. Now he's going to question. He's going, maybe it isn't so bad being a human after all. Maybe I can do more. Maybe this really isn't your will, Father. Maybe this isn't your will. I don't know. I need to know for sure. So when they arrived at the place of his devotions, he bade the three to sit down and watch with him while he went off about a stone's throw to pray. And when he had fallen down on his face, he prayed, "My Father, I came into this world to do your will. And so I have. I know that the hour has come to lay down this life in the flesh, and I do not shrink therefrom, but I would know that it is your will that I drink this cup. But I would like to know that it is your will that I drink this cup." And Jesus says, "Send me the assurance that I will please you in my death, even as I have in this life." And the master remained in a prayerful attitude for a few moments, and then going over to the three apostles, he found them sound asleep. Just out. For their eyes were heavy and they could not remain awake. And as Jesus awoke them, he said, What? What can you not watch with me, even for 1 hour? What? Can you not at least watch me for an hour? Cannot you see that my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death, and that I crave your companionship? As you know, as we've gone through these stories, Jesus always went off by his own to pray and commune with the Father and to do the Father's business, basically his universe business. But this is the first time that he's actually taking the three apostles that always accompany him with him. And he wants them to see what's going to take place. So after the three had aroused from their slumber, the master again went apart, just a short ways, by himself, and falling down on the ground again, he prayed. And Jesus says, "Father, I know it is possible to avoid this cup. All things are possible with you. But I have come to do your will. And while this is a bitter cup, I would drink it if it is your will." He's questioning it again. He's never questioned the Father's will. But now he is. And when he had thus prayed, a mighty angel, keep in mind, John Mark's watching all this. But this isn't in the Bible. About the apostles falling asleep, yes, that's in there. But who would have known that the apostles had fallen asleep unless there was somebody else watching, and that was John Mark. And when he had thus prayed to the Father, questioning whether what he was supposed to do was right, a mighty angel came down by his side and, speaking to him, touched him and strengthened him. This was not an unseen angel. This is one that could be seen with your eyes. And when Jesus returned to speak with the three apostles, he again found them fast asleep. So he awakened them, saying, "In such an hour I need that you should watch and pray with me. All the more do you need to pray that you enter not into temptation. Wherefore do you fall asleep when I leave you?" And then for a third time the master withdrew and prayed, again asking the Father, "Father, you see my sleeping apostles. Have mercy upon them. The spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. And now, O Father, if this cup may not pass, then would I drink it." Right there, he's questioning, should I do this? Should I really, really do this? Should I go through with this? I mean, his universe personalities, all of them sitting there watching, could change everything just by Jesus asking. But Jesus says, not my will, but yours be done. And when he had finished praying, he laid there for just a few moments prostrate on the ground. And when he arose and went back to his apostles, once more he found them asleep. 3 times they had fallen asleep. He surveyed them and with a pitying gesture, like tenderly said, sleep on now and take your rest. The time of decision is past. The hour is now upon us, wherein the Son of Man will be betrayed into the hands of his enemies. And as he reached down to shake them, that he might awaken them, he said, arise, arise. Let us be going back to the camp. For behold, he who betrays me is at hand, and the hour has come when my flock shall be scattered, being the whole Jewish people. But I have already told you about these things. And during the years that Jesus lived among his followers, they did indeed have much proof of his divine nature, but just now are they about to witness new evidences of his humanity. Just before the greatest of all the revelations of his divinity, his resurrection, must now come the greatest proofs of his mortal nature, his humiliation, and his crucifixion. Each time he prayed in the garden, his humanity laid a firmer faith hold upon his divinity. His human will more completely became one with the divine will of his Father. Among other words spoken to him by the mighty angel was the message that the Father desired his Son to finish his earth bestowal by passing through the creature experience of death, just as all mortal creatures must. All mortal creatures must experience material dissolution. It's you and me, folks. In passing from the existence of time, we live in time, into the progression of eternity, where there is no time. That's hard to imagine. That's really hard to imagine. Hang on, I got a dry throat. It's a little chilly here when the sun goes down, so I wore a little linen jacket today. Earlier in the evening, it had not seemed so difficult to drink the cup. It was before he went up there on the hill into that ravine. But as the human Jesus bade farewell to his apostles and sent them to their rest, the trial grew more appalling. Jesus experienced that natural ebb and flow of feeling which is common to all human experience. And just now he was weary from all of his work. He was exhausted from the long hours of strenuous labor and painful anxiety concerning basically the safety of his apostles. I think he worried about them more than he worried about himself. Well, we know that he did. While no mortal can presume to understand the thoughts and feelings of the incarnate Son of God at such a time as this, we know that he endured great anguish and suffered untold sorrow. For the perspiration just rolled off his face in great big drops, and he was at last convinced that the Father intended to allow natural events to take their course. He was fully determined to comply and employ none. He was not going to employ any of his sovereign power as the supreme head of a universe to save himself. The assembled hosts of a vast creation are now hovered over this scene under the transient joint command of Gabriel and his personalized adjuster, that Spirit of the Father, who leaves, and they're there together out of his body. The adjuster was there with Gabriel, probably mourning what he was going to have to go through. It says the division commanders of these armies of heaven have repeatedly been warned not to interfere. So he's not only got some universe personnel, he's with him, he's got heavenly armies there, just waiting for the word from Jesus. Okay, we're not going to do this. But that time doesn't come. Jesus says, okay. Obviously, he was helped over the hump when the angel sat down next to him and put his hand on Jesus' shoulder. So here the commanders, the division commanders of these armies of heaven have repeatedly been warned not to interfere with these transactions on earth unless Jesus himself should order them to intervene. The experience of parting with the apostles was a great strain on the human heart of Jesus. And this sorrow of love bore down on him and made it more difficult to face such a death as he well knew awaited him. He realized how weak and how ignorant his apostles were, and he dreaded to leave them. He well knew that the time of his departure had come, but his human heart longed to find out whether there might not possibly be some legitimate avenue of escape. He's already been assured by that angel. He's already got the will of the Father in him that he's got to do this, but he's still thinking, is there some way I should be escaping out of this? To escape from this terrible plight of suffering and sorrow. And when it thus sought escape, and when it had thus sought escape and failed, it was willing to drink the cup. The divine mind of Michael, yes, Michael, creator of our universe, who then incarnated as Jesus. The divine mind of Michael knew he had done his best for the 12 apostles. But the human heart of Jesus wished that more might have been done for them before they should be left alone in the world. Jesus' heart was being crushed. He truly loved his brethren. He was isolated from his family in the flesh. One of his chosen associates was now betraying him. His father Joseph, Joseph's people had rejected him, the Jews, and thereby sealed their doom as a people. They soon would be scattered, about 20 years hence. Joseph's people had rejected him and thereby sealed their doom as a people with a special mission on earth. They always were. They were the chosen people from the time of Moses, from the time of Abraham. His soul was being tortured by baffled love and rejected mercy. It was just one of those awful human moments when everything seems to bear down with crushing cruelty and terrible agony. Jesus' humanity was not insensible to this situation of private loneliness, public shame, and the appearance of the failure of his cause. All these sentiments bore down on him with indescribable heaviness. I mean, now he's definitely feeling it. He's feeling this. In this great sorrow, his mind went back to the days of his childhood in Nazareth and to his early work in Galilee. At the time of this great trial, there came up in his mind many of those pleasant scenes of his earthly ministry. And it was from these old memories of Nazareth and Capernaum and Mount Hermon, and of the sunrise and the sunset on the shimmering sea of Galilee, that he soothed himself as he made his human heart strong, ready to encounter the traitor who should so soon betray him. Before Judas and the soldiers arrived, the master had fully regained his customary poise. He finally started to calm down, but he really questioned it all, didn't he? He questioned it all. He even questioned his father. He said, do I really need to drink this cup? But the spirit had triumphed over the flesh, and faith had asserted itself over all human tendencies to fear or entertain doubt. The supreme test of the full realization of the human nature had been met, and acceptably passed. Once more, the Son of Man was prepared to face his enemies with equanimity and in the full assurance of his invincibility as a mortal man unreservedly dedicated to the doing of his Father's will. Now we're going to get into the betrayal. Let's flip over to the next paper here. Where are you? Let me get over there. I hope I don't shut my whole computer down here. Okay, we're getting into, actually, this is paper 183, and the betrayal and the arrest of Jesus. This is exciting. To me, I swear this feels like a spy novel when you read this. This is heart-wrenching. This is really heart-wrenching and almost a nail-biter. So after Jesus had finally awakened Peter, James, and John, he suggested that they go to their tents and seek sleep in preparation for the duties of tomorrow. But by this time, the 3 apostles were wide awake. They had been refreshed by their 3 short naps. And besides, they were stimulated and aroused by the arrival on the scene of 2 excited messengers who inquired for David Zebedee and quickly went in quest of him when Peter informed them where he kept watch. Although 8 of the apostles were still sound asleep, the Greeks, remember there were Greeks that were camping there with him. Many. Was it 20, 30, 40 Greeks were there? The Greeks who were encamped alongside them were more fearful of trouble. So much that they had posted a sentinel themselves to give the alarm in case danger should arise. When these 2 messengers hurried into camp, the Greek sentinel proceeded to arouse all of his fellow countrymen, who streamed forth from their tents, fully dressed and now fully armed. All the camp was now aroused except the 8 apostles. They were still asleep. Peter desired to call his associates, but Jesus definitely forbade him. Told him no, let them sleep. The master mildly admonished them all to return to their tents, but they were reluctant to comply with his suggestion. Failing to disperse his followers, the master left them and walked down toward the olive press near the entrance to Gethsemane Park. Although the 3 apostles, the Greeks, and the other members of the camp hesitated immediately to follow him, John Mark hastened around through the olive trees and secreted himself in a small shed near the olive press. Jesus withdrew from the camp and from his friends in order that his apprehenders, when they arrived, might arrest him without disturbing his apostles. He didn't want his apostles arrested. He did not want them. I mean, if they arrested the apostles and killed them too, who was going to go out and teach? Who? Truly, who? The master feared to have his apostles awake and present at the time of his arrest, lest the spectacle of Judas's betraying him should so arouse their animosity that they would offer resistance to the soldiers and would be taken into custody with him. He feared that if they should be arrested with him, they might also perish with him. He didn't want that to happen. Though Jesus knew that the plan for his death had its origin in the councils of the rulers of the Jews, he was also aware that all such nefarious schemes had the full approval of Lucifer and Satan and Caligastia. The devil, Satan, Lucifer. And he well knew that these rebels of the realms would also be pleased to see all of the apostles destroyed right along with him. And they're watching too. You can kind of picture it. Nobody sees them, but they're all there. Universe personalities are all there with legions of heavenly armies are there. And yet Lucifer with his armies and his associates, they're all there. Everybody's watching. Everybody's watching. Jesus sat down alone on the olive press where he awaited the coming of the betrayer. And he was seen at this time only by John Mark and an innumerable host. An innumerable, that means an uncountable number of celestial observers. the Father's will. There is great danger of misunderstanding the meaning of numerous sayings and many events associated with the termination of the Master's career in the flesh. The cruel treatment of Jesus by the ignorant servants and the callous soldiers, the unfair conduct of his trials to come, and the unfeeling attitude of the professed religious leaders must not be confused with the fact that Jesus, in patiently submitting to all this suffering and humiliation, was still truly doing the will of the Father in paradise. It was indeed and in truth the will of the Father that his Son should drink the cup to the full, the cup of mortal experience, from birth to death. But the Father in heaven had nothing whatever to do with instigating the barbarous behavior of those supposedly civilized human beings who so brutally tortured the Master and so horribly heaped successive indignities upon his non-resisting person. So it wasn't the Father that was in those people who tortured Jesus. Unfortunately, the Father became an observant watcher also, watching his evil acting children play out their part. These inhuman and shocking experiences which Jesus was called upon to endure in the final hours of his mortal life were not in any sense a part of the divine will of the Father, which his human nature had so triumphantly pledged to carry out at the time of the final surrender of man to God, as signified in the threefold prayer which he indulged and indited in the garden while his weary apostles slept the sleep of physical exhaustion. The Father in heaven desired the bestowal Son to finish his earth career naturally, just as all mortals must finish up their lives on earth and in the flesh. Ordinary men and women cannot expect to have their last hours on earth and the supervening episode of death made easy by a special dispensation. Accordingly, Jesus elected to lay down his life in the flesh in the manner which was in keeping with the outworking of natural events, and he steadfastly refused to extricate himself from the cruel clutches of a wicked conspiracy of inhumane events which swept on with horrible certainty toward his unbelievable humiliation and ignominious death. And every bit of all this astounding manifestation of hatred and this unprecedented demonstration of cruelty was the work of evil men and wicked mortals. God in heaven did not will it, neither did the arch enemies of Jesus dictate it, though they did much to ensure that unthinking and evil mortals would thus reject the bestowal Son. Even the father of sin, Lucifer himself, turned his face away from the excruciating horror of the scene of the crucifixion. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, even Lucifer didn't want to watch it. That's odd. I would have felt that he was just up there gleefully. Look, I win, I win, I win. Pat myself on the back. But even he couldn't watch the cruelty of the crucifixion. Now, Judas in the city. After Judas so abruptly left the table while eating the Last Supper, he went directly to the home of his cousin. And then did the two go straight to the captain of the temple guards. Judas requested the captain to assemble the guards and informed him that he was ready to lead them to Jesus. Judas, having appeared on the scene a little before he was expected, there was some delay in getting started for the Mark home, where Judas expected to find Jesus still visiting with the apostles at the home of John Mark. The Master and the 11 left the home of Elijah Mark, that's the father of John Mark, fully 15 minutes, just 15 minutes before the betrayer and the guards arrived. By the time the apprehenders reached the Mark home, Jesus and the 11 were well outside the walls of the city and on their way up to the Gethsemane Olivet camp. And Judas was much perturbed by this failure to find Jesus at the Mark residence and in the company of 11 men, only 2 of whom were armed for resistance. He happened to know that in the afternoon, when they had left camp, only Simon Peter and Simon Zelotes were girded with swords. Judas had hoped to take Jesus when the city was quiet and when there was little chance of resistance. The betrayer feared that if he wanted for them to return to their camp, more than three score of devoted disciples would be encountered. What's that, 60? Scores 20? 20, 40, 60? That would include the Greeks and the apostles. Maybe some other disciples that we're not aware of. So he knew that they were going to be facing, Judas knew that they were going to be facing 80 of devoted disciples would be encountered. He also knew that Simon Zelotes had an ample store of arms. Don't forget, Simon Zelotes was the zealot. He's the one that was always ready to fight. Fight, 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 fight. Jesus would have to tell him, no, no, no. It's getting close to sunset, but I don't think we're going to catch it. Let's take another look. Let me show you again where I'm at, just in case it came in a little bit late. We'll get on with the story here in a second. Oops, I got to turn this thing around. And hopefully my fat fingers won't hit the wrong button. There we go. Okay, again, you can see the sun's about ready to go down on what is today, December 30th, 2022. And we are in Puerto Vallarta at the Sunscape Resort. And that again over there is downtown. Let me move this away a little bit. That over there is downtown Puerto Vallarta and the Malecon. The lights haven't quite come on yet. It's just that time of dusk. We're at dusk right now. I see some people are in there. Hi Anna. Hi Anna. Hi Susan. Marisa, good, you're there. I hope you can come on a little bit later, Marisa. I'm going to watch for your light. And for anybody else that's watching right now, it's exciting. It's going to be the last show of 2022. And Jesus is shortly going to be arrested. And then we'll get into his trial on Monday. Probably Monday, if all goes well. But let's get through this. This is crazy time. This is just absolute crazy time. So Judas was becoming increasingly nervous as he meditated how the 11 loyal apostles would detest him. Absolutely. He had to know they were going to hate him, for crying out loud. He just spent the last 3 years living with them. And he feared they would all seek to destroy him. He was not only disloyal, but he was also really a coward at heart. When they failed to find Jesus in the upper chamber, Judas asked the captain of the guard to return to the temple. For by this time, the rulers had begun to assemble at the high priest's home preparatory to receiving Jesus. They were expecting to already have Jesus. Seeing that their bargain with the traitor called for Jesus' arrest by midnight of that day, Judas explained to his associates that they had missed Jesus by only mere moments at the Mark home, and that it would be necessary to go to Gethsemane to arrest him now. The betrayer then went on to state that more than 80 devoted followers were encamped with him and that they were all well armed. The rulers of the Jews reminded Judas that Jesus had always preached non-resistance, but Judas replied that they could not depend upon all of Jesus' followers obeying such teaching. He really feared for himself, Judas did, and therefore made bold to ask for a company of 40 armed soldiers. Since the Jewish authorities had no such force of armed men under their jurisdiction, they went at once to the fortress of Antonia and requested the Roman commander to give them this guard. But when he learned that they intended to arrest Jesus, he promptly refused to accede to their request and referred them to his superior officer. And in this way, more than an hour was now consumed in going from one authority to another until they finally were compelled to go to Pilate. Now they had to go to Pilate. Judas had to go to Pilate to ask for 40 more armed soldiers. So they were compelled to go to Pilate himself in order to obtain permission to employ the armed Roman guards. Now it was late when they arrived at Pilate's house, and he had retired to his private chambers with his wife, Pilate. It's always the wives. Wives are so sensible. They're so sensible. Men are so, it's like they got cobwebs in their brains, because he had retired to his private chambers, Pilate did, with his wife, and he hesitated to have anything to do with the enterprise, all the more so since his wife had asked him not to grant the request. So Pilate's wife said, no, don't give that betrayer your soldiers. Like I said, sometimes wives are pretty smart. Probably more times than not. But inasmuch as the presiding officer of the Jewish Sanhedrin was present, making personal requests for this assistance, the governor thought it wise to grant the petition, thinking he could later on right any wrong they might be disposed to commit. And accordingly, when Judas Iscariot started out from the temple about half after 11 o'clock, he was accompanied by more than 60 people. Judas is now leading 60 armed people to arrest Jesus. There are temple guards and Roman soldiers and curious servants of the chief priests and the rulers. Now it comes to the master's arrest. As this company of armed soldiers and guards carrying torches and lanterns approached the garden, Judas stepped well out in front. He was going to lead them. He stepped well out in front of the band that he might be ready quickly to identify Jesus so that the apprehenders could easily lay hands on him before his associates could rally to his defense. And there was yet another reason why Judas chose to be ahead of the master's enemies. He thought it would appear that he had arrived on the scene ahead of the soldiers so that the apostles and others gathered about Jesus might not directly connect him with the armed guards. Stupid man. Following so closely upon his heels, so Judas had even thought to pose as having hastened out to warn them, acting like he's going to warn them of the coming of the apprehenders. But this plan was thwarted by Jesus' blighting greeting of the betrayer. Jesus greeted Judas. Though the master spoke to Judas kindly, he still greeted him as a traitor. As soon as Peter, James, and John, with some 30 of their fellow campers, saw the armed band with torches swing around the brow of the hill, they knew that these soldiers were coming to arrest Jesus, and they all rushed down to near the olive press where the master was sitting in moonlit solitude. As the company of soldiers approached on one side, the 3 apostles and their associates approached on the other. As Judas strode forward to accost the master, there the 2 groups stood, motionless, with the master between them, and Judas making ready to impress the traitorous kiss upon his brow. It had been the hope of the betrayer that he could, after leading the guards to Gethsemane, simply point out Jesus to the soldiers, or at most carry out the promise to greet him with a kiss and then quickly retire from the scene. Judas greatly feared that the apostles would all be present and that they would concentrate their attack upon him in retribution for his daring to betray their beloved teacher. But when the master greeted him as a betrayer, he was so confused that he made no attempt to flee. Jesus made one last effort to save Judas from actually betraying him, in that before the traitor could reach him, he stepped to one side and, addressing the foremost soldier on the left, the captain of the Romans, said, Whom do you seek? The captain answered, Jesus of Nazareth. Then Jesus stepped up immediately in front of the officer, and standing there in the calm majesty of the God of all this creation, said, I am he. I am he. Many of this armed band had heard Jesus teach in the temple. Others had learned about his mighty works, and when they heard him thus boldly announce his identity, those in the front ranks fell suddenly backward. They were overcome with surprise at his calm and majestic announcement of identity. There was, therefore, no need for Judas to go on with his plan of betrayal. The master had boldly revealed himself to his enemies, and they could have taken him without Judas's assistance. But the traitor had to do something to account for his presence with this armed band. And besides, he wanted to make a show of carrying out his big part of the betrayal bargain with the rulers of the Jews in order to be eligible for the great reward and honors which he believed would be heaped upon him in compensation for his promise to deliver Jesus into their hands. Again, remember, a few days ago we went over this when Judas had met with the Sanhedrin. They gave him the impression that he would be sitting in the high seats of honor. They gave him that impression. But behind Judas's back, they scorned him. They didn't like him. They didn't like him either. They didn't like a traitor. They didn't need him to betray Jesus. They were going to arrest him anyway. So they didn't like him at all. But in Judas's mind, he thought he would be sitting in the high seats of honor in the Sanhedrin, and people would be bowing down to him, and he'd be wearing the great robes and headdresses of the Pharisees or the Sadducees. In the book of Matthew that we read yesterday, Matthew said that they offered him 30 pieces of silver to betray Jesus. Well, if he was offered 30 pieces of silver, he used to be the treasurer. He came from a wealthy family anyway. 30 pieces of silver meant nothing to him. He wouldn't have betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. But as we'll find out, that's what his great reward ends up being. And we'll find out he just threw it. That wasn't what he was expecting. He was expecting to be well compensated for his promise to deliver Jesus into their hands. As the guards rallied from their first faltering at the sight of Jesus and at the sound of his unusual voice, and as the apostles and disciples drew closer, Judas stepped up to Jesus and, placing a kiss upon his brow, said, "Hail, Master and Teacher." Can you imagine? Seriously? He goes up to Jesus and kisses him on the brow. And it says, "Hail, Master and Teacher." And as Judas thus embraced his master, Jesus said, "Friend, is it not enough to do this? Would you even betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" Would you even betray the Son of Man with a kiss? The apostles and the disciples were literally stunned by what they saw, and for a moment, nobody moved. Then Jesus, disengaging himself from the traitorous embrace of Judas, you can picture him just pushing himself away. Go away. Go away. Jesus stepped up to the guards and the soldiers and again asked, "Whom do you seek?" And again the captain said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And again answered Jesus, "I have told you that I am he. If therefore you seek me, let these others go their way. I am ready to go with you. Leave the others alone." Jesus was ready to go back to Jerusalem with the guards, and the captain of the soldiers was altogether willing to allow the 3 apostles and their associates to go their way in peace. But before they were able to get started, as Jesus stood there waiting, the captain's orders, one Malchus, the Syrian bodyguard of the high priest, stepped up to Jesus and made ready to bind his hands behind his back. Although the Roman captain had not directed that Jesus should be thus bound. When Peter and his associates saw their master being subjected to this indignity, they were no longer able to restrain themselves. Peter drew his sword and with the others rushed forward to smite Malchus. But before the soldiers could come to the defense of the high priest's servant, Jesus raised a forbidding hand to Peter and speaking sternly said, "Peter, put up your sword. They who take the sword shall perish by the sword. Do you not understand that it is the Father's will that I drink this cup? And do you not further know that I could even now command more than 12 legions of angels and their associates who would deliver me from the hands of those few men?" Jesus knew they were all there. Legions of armies from his universe. Angels. Mighty warriors were right there. Ready to do anything that Michael asked them to do. Notice here in the story from the Midwayers, Peter does not cut off the ear of the guard. So if we do some channeling, I'm very curious to ask if Peter can come in and try to find out why the book of Luke speaks of Peter cutting off the ear. But here in the Urantia book, Jesus stops him. While Jesus thus effectively put a stop to the show of physical resistance by his followers, it was enough to arouse the fear of the captain of the guards, who now, with the help of his soldiers, laid heavy hands on Jesus and quickly bound him up. And as they tied his hands with heavy cords, Jesus said to them, Why do you come out against me with swords and with staves, as if to seize a robber? Staves, knives. Why do you come out against me with swords and with staves, as if to seize a robber? I was daily with you in the temple, publicly teaching the people, and you made no effort to take me. When Jesus had been bound, the captain, fearing that the followers of the master might attempt to rescue him, gave orders that they be seized. But the soldiers were not quick enough, since having overheard the captain orders to arrest them, Jesus' followers they all fled. They disappeared. They fled in haste back into the ravine. Yet all this time, John Mark had remained secluded in the nearby shed. John Mark watched everything. He saw everything. When the guards started back to Jerusalem with Jesus, John Mark attempted to steal out of the shed in order to catch up with the fleeing apostles and the disciples. But just as he emerged, one of the last of the returning soldiers who had pursued the fleeing disciples was passing near, and seeing this young man in his linen coat, gave chase, almost overtaking him. In fact, the soldier got near enough to John to grab hold upon his coat. But the young man freed himself from the garment, escaping naked. John Mark naked, while the soldier held the empty coat. John Mark made his way in all haste to David Zebedee on the upper trail. And when he had told David what had happened, they both hastened back to the tents of the sleeping apostles and informed all 8 of the master's betrayal and his arrest. At about the time the 8 apostles were being awakened, those who had fled up the ravine were returning, and they all gathered together near the olive press to debate what should be done. In the meantime, Simon Peter and John Zebedee, who had hidden among the olive trees, had already gone on after the mob of soldiers, guards, and servants who were now leading Jesus back to Jerusalem, as they would have led a despicable and desperate criminal. John followed close behind the mob, but Peter followed afar off. After John Mark's escape from the clutch of the soldier, he provided himself with a cloak, which he found in the tent of Simon Peter and John Zebedee. He suspected the guards were going to take Jesus to the home of Annas, the high priest emeritus. So he skirted around through the olive orchards and was there ahead of the mob, hiding near the entrance to the gate of the high priest's palace. And then there's a discussion at the olive press. James Zebedee found himself separated from Simon Peter and his brother John, and so he now joined the other apostles and their fellow campers at the olive press to deliberate on what should be done in view of the master's arrest. Andrew had been released from all responsibility in the group management of his fellow apostles. We learned that yesterday. And accordingly, in this greatest of all crises in their lives, Andrew was silent. Oh, I wish I could show a sunset. But the sunset's behind a building that's right over here. The lights are starting to come on the city. We'll take another look downtown in a minute. So here, Andrew doesn't know what to do. He'd been relieved of all his responsibility. So accordingly, in this greatest of all crises in their lives, he was silent. After a short informal discussion, Simon Zelotes stood up on the stone wall of the olive press and, making an impassioned plea for loyalty to the master and the cause of the kingdom, exhorted his fellow apostles and the other disciples to hasten on after the mob and effect the rescue of Jesus. The majority of the company would have been disposed to follow his aggressive leadership had it not been for the advice of Nathanael. Remember, Nathanael was the only one yesterday that would not take the sword. All the rest of them took a sword from Simon. Nathanael said, "No, that's not the Father's will. And the Master has told us not to." So they all would have gone after him except for the advice of Nathanael, who stood up the moment Simon had finished speaking and called their attention to Jesus' often repeated teachings regarding non-resistance. He further reminded them that Jesus had that very night instructed them that they should preserve their lives for the time when they should go forth into the world proclaiming the good news of the gospel of the heavenly kingdom. Had it not been for Nathanael, it's possible they all would have been killed. They all would have been arrested. We don't pick that up in the Gospels, in the New Testament. And Nathanael, and again, in the Bible, sometimes they call Nathanael Bartholomew. And Nathanael was encouraged in this stand by James Zebedee, who now told how Peter and others drew their swords to defend the master against arrest, and that Jesus bade Simon Peter and his fellow swordsmen to sheathe their blades, put their blades back into their holders. Matthew and Philip also made speeches, but nothing definite came of this discussion until Thomas, calling their attention to the fact that Jesus had counseled Lazarus against exposing himself to death, pointed out that they could do nothing to save their master inasmuch as he refused to allow his friends to defend him. And since he persisted in refraining from the use of his divine powers to frustrate his human enemies, Thomas persuaded them to scatter, every man now for himself, with the understanding that David Zebedee would remain at the camp to maintain a clearinghouse and the messenger headquarters for the group. By 2:30, that's now in the morning, on the day of Passover, by 2:30 that morning, the camp was deserted. Only David remained on hand with 3 or 4 messengers, the others having been dispatched to secure information as to where Jesus had been taken and what was going to be done with him. 5 of the apostles, Nathanael, Matthew, Philip, and the twins, the Alphaeus twins, went into hiding at Bethpage and in Bethany. Thomas, Andrew, James, and Simon Zelotes were hiding in the city, in Jerusalem. Simon Peter and John Zebedee followed along to the home of Anas. Staying in the background, but they were following Jesus. Shortly after daybreak, Simon Peter wandered back to the Gethsemane camp, a dejected picture of deep despair. Don't think we're going to get into it today, but don't forget what Jesus had told Peter when he gave him his comforting words. He told him before the cock crowed, Peter would deny Jesus 3 or 4 times. A dejected picture of deep despair was Peter. And David sent him the charge of a messenger to join his brother, Andrew, who was, don't forget, Andrew and Peter are brothers, who was at the home of Nicodemus in Jerusalem. Until the very end of the crucifixion, John Zebedee remained, as Jesus had directed him, always near at hand. And it was he who supplied David's messengers with information from hour to hour, which they carried to David at the garden camp, and which was then relayed to the hiding apostles and also to Jesus' family, who had now shown up. Or not quite showed up. Don't forget, they didn't want to go down the road of robbers during the darkness of night. Surely the shepherd is smitten and the sheep are scattered. While they all vaguely realize that Jesus has forewarned them of this very situation, they are too severely shocked by the Master's sudden disappearance to be able to use their minds normally. It was shortly after daylight and just after Peter had been sent to join his brother that Jude, Jesus' brother in the flesh, arrived in the camp, almost breathless and in advance of the rest of Jesus' family, only to learn that the Master had already been placed under arrest. And Jude hastened back down the Jericho road to carry this information to his mother and to his brothers and sisters. David Zebedee sent word to Jesus' family by Jude to foregather at the house of Martha and Mary, Lazarus' sisters, in Bethany. Don't forget, Lazarus took off and went up to Philadelphia to be with Abner. And there await the news. David Zebedee sent word to Jesus' family by Jude to foregather at the house of Martha and Mary in Bethany, and there to await the news which his messengers would regularly bring them. And this was the situation during the last half of the Thursday night and the early morning hours of Friday as regards the apostles, the chief disciples, and the earthly family of Jesus. And all these groups and individuals were kept in touch with each other by the messenger service, which David Zebedee continued to operate from his headquarters at the Gethsemane camp. Now they're going to be on the way to the high priest's palace. I'm sorry if we're going to run a little bit long. Yeah, I don't want to cut it off just yet. I want to get through this. How far along are we? Before they started away from the garden with Jesus, a dispute arose between the Jewish captain of the temple guards and the Roman captain of the company of soldiers as to where they were to take Jesus. The captain of the temple guards gave orders that he should be taken to Caiaphas, the acting high priest. The captain of the Roman soldiers directed that Jesus be taken to the palace of Annas, the former high priest and father-in-law of Caiaphas. And this he did because the Romans were in the habit of dealing directly with Annas in all matters having to do with the enforcement of the Jewish ecclesiastical laws. And the orders of the Roman captain were obeyed, and they took Jesus to the home of Annas for his preliminary examination. Judas marched along next to the captains, overhearing all that was said, but took no part in the dispute, for neither the Jewish captain nor the Roman officer would so much as speak to Judas. for they held him in such contempt. About this time, John Zebedee, remembering his master's instructions to remain always near at hand, hurried up near Jesus as he marched along between the two captains. The commander of the temple guard, seeing John come up alongside, said to his assistant, "Take this man, John, and bind him. He is one of this fellow's followers." But when the Roman captain heard this and looking around saw John, he gave orders that the apostle should come over by him, and that no man should molest him. Then the Roman captain said to the Jewish captain, "This man is neither a traitor nor a coward. I saw him in the garden, and he did not draw a sword to resist us. He has the courage to come forward to be with his master, and no man shall lay hands on him." John. The Roman law allows that any prisoner may have at least one friend to stand with him before the judgment bar, and this man shall not be prevented from standing by the side of his master, the prisoner. And when Judas heard this, he was so ashamed and humiliated that he dropped back behind the marchers, coming up to the palace of Annas alone. And this exemplifies why John Zebedee was permitted to remain near Jesus all the way through his trying experiences this night and the next day. The Jews feared to say aught to John or to molest him in any way because he had something of the status of a Roman counselor designated to act as observer of the transactions of the Jewish ecclesiastical court. John's position of privilege was made all the more secure when, in turning Jesus over to the captain of the temple guards at the gate of Annas' palace, the Roman, addressing his assistant, said, "Go along with this prisoner and see that these Jews do not kill him without Pilate's consent. Watch that they do not assassinate him, and see that his friend, the Galilean, is permitted to stand by and observe all that goes on." And thus was John able to be near Jesus right on up to the time of his death on the cross. Though the other 10 apostles were compelled to remain in hiding, John was acting under Roman protection, and the Jews dared not molest him until after the Master's death. And all the way to the palace of Annas, Jesus did not open his mouth, not even once. From the time of his arrest to the time of his appearance before Annas, the Son of Man spoke no word whatsoever. Jesus has been arrested. We haven't gotten to the part that confronts Peter when he denies Jesus. We'll get into that on our first storytelling in the new year of 2023. Today being the last. I don't know if we can see this. Let me turn this around. Let me show you once again the evening now. And I see Marisa's coming up, but let me show you. You can see the sun has set. That is the Sunscape Resort there. And people are out of the pool now. And let's see if I can spin this around a little bit without doing anything terrible here. And I can't see. Hi, Shelley. Shelley's in there too. Hi, Marisa, you're still there. And there you can see the lights of Puerto Vallarta now, and that's all along the Malecon. You can see those string of lights. You see the string of lights there along the coastline. That is the famous Malecon, where you'll find all the nightclubs and all the bars and all the shops and all the stores, and just everything's kind of cool down there. It really is. And as you can see, the day is ending. The day is ending. So let's bring Marisa up in. I think maybe Matthew might be with her, because Matthew didn't get a chance to talk yesterday. So let me turn this back around so you can see my ugly mug. And there I am. And you don't need to watch me, but let's see if we can get Marisa in here tonight. And we're going to approve Marisa to come in. So let's send the invite. Wait, unable to add guest. Why? They can't join your broadcast at this time. Okay. All right, Marisa, we're going to have to try this again. Let me add you. Send invite. invite. Okay, invite. Now try to get in, Marissa. It's coming to you. Get rid of this shining in my eyes. Let me just take my glasses off. Keep a little bit of the light. Yay, you're
Two phones, but
there.
I have
Hey.
the camera set up on the other one. Hold on. Now it's gonna be a weird echo from the other phone.
Yeah, can you turn it down a little bit? Let me lift up this just a little bit.
Hold on.
Yeah, you can't ever get on
I
that
don't
other
know.
phone for whatever reason. That intuition living phone that you have, it just doesn't take. It just doesn't take.
Let me
I
resend the
got you
request.
on, but I got you on audio. I don't have you on. Oh,
I know.
audio.
I'm ready for the video on this.
Send me the request. Hang in there, folks. Hang on. Gosh, anybody show up at my house? Oh, they're home. While we're waiting for Tawny, come say hi. Say Happy New Year. Tawny, come. Say hi real quick. I know you're playing Roblox, but just wish everybody a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Okay, you talking to Jennifer or to Hennessy's?
No.
No? You're just playing Roblox? Okay. I'll be done soon. Kids and their games. Let's see. Okay, looks like Marissa's coming back in. Let's try this again. Approve. I got 2 to approve. Which one do I do? You're on there twice, Marissa. I'll do the one that has 6,000 followers. Send invite. Nope, can't add you on that one. Let me try it again. Let me do the one where you have 3,000 followers. Geez, you got 10,000 followers between 2 phones. Okay, you should be able to come in now, hopefully. I see it's setting you up. Let's see if Marissa gets in here. Get that out of my eyes. I wish I could change this a little bit. God, I just hate that light in my eyes. But oh no, now what's happening? Marissa, where are you? You disappeared. Ay, 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 ay. Oh. Let me try this again, folks. Let's see. Have some faith. Patience. It's the end of the year. It's the end of 2022. So hang in there. And most people are going to be seeing this over the weekend anyway. We'll see it. Okay, I'm going to try approving you again. Send an invite. I just sent an invite and it says it's adding you. But you're on there with 2 different phones. And you said one's going to only be an audio. And I don't know which is which. I'm not very... It's not adding you, Marissa. It says it's adding you.
Know which is which.
There you go.
Yay!
But oh, yay! There you are. You made it! Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!
This is the phone I keep asking, and for some reason it's going on this one, so it's all good.
Okay, good. You made it. You made it. You made it. Let me get. I got this little bar in my way here, and it's very uncomfortable while I'm doing my show. It's a little different place working here down in Puerto Vallarta, but it's beautiful. Just looking down over the Bay of Banderas, and now I'm looking at all those lights over there in downtown Puerto Vallarta. It's going to be a party time there tonight and tomorrow for sure. But anyway, I'm glad you made it in, and thank you
Here, I'm
everybody
going to introduce you
for
guys to
hanging in there.
the puppy. The puppy's actually asleep, and I brought it with me so that finally sleeping. It's out here in the. Here, I do not want to get locked out of my office. Hold on. Let me do this. Put it raw. There. But I was wishing that the camera worked yesterday because I wanted to show.
Yeah, I didn't see you come in at all. I know you wrote to me afterwards and said you were there, but
Uh-oh.
I didn't have any indication that you were there.
Here she is. Hold on. Let's see. Flip the camera.
Out of the way.
Come on. There she is. Are you ready to be on camera? Are you sleeping?
There you are, a little fur ball.
Yep, there she is.
Huh.
There she is. She's a little fur ball, and then her brother is with Mama.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so they fought so much, and they would yip and scream and fight. So I thought this one kind of looks like Stevie.
Oh, he's cute.
It's super
He's
cute.
cute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very cute. And then Lucky's foot is feeling much better, so we have him on a crate. But Anya is here today,
Oh,
unexpected. Yeah, her and her sister both flew in because there's some issue with. Wow, this is a long stick. Wow, I have a selfie stick so that I don't go like this, or I don't end up like just like one eye on the camera. So I'm sitting still when I channel. Oh, she's falling asleep in my lap. See, so cute. You're so cute. Anyways, yeah. So I left the house because Anya and her sister are there, and then we changed the flight until tomorrow. So they'll be leaving tomorrow. She would have liked to be on camera and stuff, but um, her beliefs about I wanted her to be able to hear the story that you were reading and stuff, but it's just kind of like what's it called? Cutting into this part, she needs to listen to the whole thing because she used to be very, very, very strong believer in Jesus, and now isn't so much. So
I guess that happens.
yeah, it's
Yet the vast majority of, at least half of the people that watch this on a regular basis
mhm.
are kids under 20.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
and she's super intuitive and super into intuition, and she can see stuff and feel stuff and into healing, and kind of she likes doing like cards and stuff like that, but I would like for her to get more into
Yeah, I
big
wouldn't
stuff.
go down that
You
road,
can't
to tell
really
you the truth.
tell
Yeah,
kids.
I just always think of tarot cards and things like that as just work of the dark side, like Ouija boards. You either see it or you don't. You either see the other side and get messages from the other side, but trying to go that way.
She's a channel, so
That,
she can receive the information without the cards. She doesn't need the cards.
so
To
why
and
is she even messing with those?
I think that that's what teenagers are into and they think is cool and all that stuff, instead of saying like, oh, I'm channeling God or Christ, or I mean, it just feels like weird and almost like sacrilegious almost if you say that.
Yeah,
There's really not like a space or a place like in this world for what she is or what I am, really, unless you go like, I mean, if I'm at church, I can't be like, oh yeah, I channel God and I talk to God, and I can see the body and I can see the energy, and they're like, what energy, what body? Like, it's like people just don't get it. So I feel like the world has only created a place for, you know, readings with tarot cards and all that woo woo stuff, or, religion. And so that's the cool thing about us, is we're kind of bridging that. And I think it's very, very cool that I'm hearing the story. I'm like, don't stop reading, man. You're leaving us hanging all weekend for the story, because the story is actually
uh-huh.
really, really good. Is my
Yeah, it
camera
is good.
kind of fuzzy? Let's see. Picture.
No, I was trying to see if I can brighten things up because I'm going off into the dark here, but that's not important. And when I do bring up the light, I end up reflecting all the light off my glasses. Anyway, I had one question: if you're in a channeling mood, or whether you're just coming
I
in to
am.
say
I
hi.
am.
I don't
I'm
know what you're
over here
doing.
at the office. Everyone's making soup at the house and stuff. And I said, I need to go over and do Papa's show and do some channeling. So I'll be back around. And I told them I'd be back around like 5:30 or 6, and they're good with it. Anya's staying an extra night with her sister, so I'll have all night with them, and then tomorrow before we take them back to the airport. So, anyways, it was a good mistake with the airlines, and I'm glad that they ended up here in town, and we're holding her captive an extra night instead of sending her on her way right now. So,
How long has she been there?
a couple hours.
That's all?
Yeah.
Oh, is she in a layover or
Layover.
something?
Yeah, they're on a
Oh,
layover in
where was she going from? She lives in Oklahoma.
uh,
Where was she?
Reno, where her mom's
Oh,
ex is, which is Aubrey's father. So she was with
oh,
Aubrey, her sister, visiting their dad. She looks at him kind of like a dad too.
oh,
So
okay.
they're visiting him for a little bit, and then they're flying back to Oklahoma, and they're supposed to go through Tucson, Arizona, and have this big layover. And Katrina was nervous leaving him there, so she rerouted him through Vegas. So we went and got him, and
Uh-huh.
then And then Anya goes, well, we're not back in school until Tuesday. So, and Aubrey was like, I'll stay. So we got him a flight tomorrow night instead of tonight with no, charge or anything like that. They gave it to us for free. So we don't know
that's
where the
good.
luggage is, but I'm sure it'll make it to Oklahoma.
Good.
Yeah. So anyways, okay. So what were your questions about, you said something I heard you earlier was about Peter cutting the ear off.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, very well-known story in Christianity about when Jesus was being arrested, that Peter cut off the ear of one of the guards. And then the Bible doesn't even say whether Jesus heals the ear or whatever. It's just that the ear is cut off, and then Jesus tells Peter to back off. But
there's so many stories about ears.
in
Doesn't Einstein cut off his ear, or didn't Van Gogh cut off his ear, or something like that?
Van Gogh. But
Ear he cut off.
anyway, but in the Midway, or in the Urantia account, they were ready. They were ready to go to battle. Jesus stopped Peter. Don't do it. And there is no account of a guard having his ear cut off. So I was going to ask Peter, what's the truth? Which one's the truth?
So what's interesting is I have a Peter in front of me and another Peter in front of me. There's two Peters. And then I have our normal Peter that's goofy, like jumping around over here. So I want to understand why there's so many Peters. Oh, hold on. Let me just, I said a prayer and cleared everything, but let me just make sure that, okay, Heavenly Father God, we just call in all of our guides, all of our angels, and allowing Jesus, the real Jesus, his soul, his spirit, the authentic one, Christ, the real Christ, and Peter, the real Peter, to come in, the ones that have the information, not only about this story, but about the Bible story, and then about the truth, the real truth. We understand that we are reading stories and reading words written by man or dictated by man or brought through by man, just like me speaking words. And we just want to know what the truth is, just because we're curious, not because it's going to change anyone's beliefs or anything like this, but we're just curious. And we ask that anything that's not for our highest and best good be released, and any connections or attachments that I have in my family that may be affecting them right now, just cut off those connections, fill all of our with light, and call in the Holy Spirit to me, and only allow truth to come through me. Amen.
Sorry to interrupt your prayer. Well, let me read a little bit from Matthew.
Okay.
Maybe Matthew can come in.
All right. Perfect.
And this is still in Matthew 26. And with verse 49, going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. And Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword. Doesn't mention Peter by name. One of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way?" In that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place, that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. So there it goes. It's in Matthew. So maybe it's Matthew. It wasn't. It doesn't say it was Peter.
It was Mark.
It says it was
Mark. It was Mark.
It says it could have been John Mark, but I doubt it. Because John Mark was off somewhere else. It said, "Put your sword back." He said, it says, with that, one of Jesus's companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. That's it. That's Matthew's story. Yeah. We don't know what happened to the servant after he got his ear cut off. We don't know who it was. It just says it was a companion, but it's in the book of Matthew. But it is not in the Urantia account.
So
So I'm curious.
Mark was I just
And
heard
these
the person
were,
is Mark.
but then again, we've found out that the authors of the New Testament weren't necessarily the authors of the New Testament. There were scribes and other people that took their story. So I don't know. What's the true story?
Peter, never cut anyone's ear off, but okay, this is so 1 Peter, so I'm seeing 1 Peter, and they're showing
More
me
like Matthew, because this is from Matthew. This account is from Matthew. So
okay.
this is actually Matthew who is telling the story.
Matthew's telling the story.
It might have been Peter, the one that drew the sword, because in the Arancha account, Peter does draw the sword, but Jesus stops Peter, says, no, don't do that.
Who was the one that wouldn't take weapons? So Mark had weapons. Mark was the military guy.
In our accounts, Mark was the military guy.
Yeah, Mark is the one.
In the Arancha account, John Mark is just a young lad, and
Okay, so
it was his dad's and mom's house that that Jesus had the Last Supper.
those are 2 separate Marks.
I know we ran into that problem in our when we were doing our book, and I unfortunately threw out a bunch of parts.
Right, that's right. Yeah, you mentioned that. So what
because
Jesus
we
is
thought we
showing
had a different John Mark.
yeah. So what Jesus, she's looking at the guides. It's so funny. She's whining, looking at the guides. She just tried to dig.
I
So
know
Jesus said,
I can hear.
Poochie used to dig. I'm gonna go put her in the car so she can go to sleep. If you're gonna whine, no whining. It's okay. I'm gonna put her in the car. Here, let me run her to the car real quick, because what I'm seeing is I'm seeing Mark. John Mark is back behind me. So John Mark doesn't really have anything to do with this. The young boy. Mark, I see like this like Roman soldier guy, just like whack, like chop the ear off of somebody. Peter, I see him going like, oh, stop, like, like kind of like that, and like Jesus being like, oh geez, and like just like don't like stop. But I do see at some point Peter does chop someone's ear off, but it's not right now. So I'm asking Peter, like, what's the deal with this? And he says, well, you need to ask me about which story you're asking about. And he says there's different accounts and there's different authors that throw things in. He says the truth of the truth of the truth of the truth of the truth is that things didn't happen exactly the way that they are told. He says, but if you look at it from an upper dimensional like perspective, he said they're all just details. They're all just details. They're all just stories. And he says there is because I asked about the ear. I said, what's with the ear? He says there is something that the ear does represent something. The ear over here is the ear that hears God. The ear on the other side is the ear that hears the devil. And so many times people have gone crazy and chopped off their ears so they wouldn't hear anymore. Let me put this little girl in the car because she's gonna whine. Oh.
All right, go put the dog away. I'm going to read the rest of Matthew 26.
Okay, perfect. I'll be right back.
Okay, now this is going to be something that we're going to get into on Monday when we do our next installment of the show of the story. And Jesus says, every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. Verse 56, but this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Now Jesus before the Sanhedrin, we'll be getting into that on Monday, before the Sanhedrin, says those who had arrested Jesus, verse 57, those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent. And the high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. And Jesus answered, saying, "You have said so. But I say to all of you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? Is he worthy of the death?" They answered. Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists, and others slapped Jesus and said, "Prophesy to us, Messiah, who hit you?" Peter disowns Jesus. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. "You also were with Jesus of Galilee," she said. But he denied it before them all. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied it again with an oath. "I don't know the man," he said. After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away." Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man." That's Peter. And immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken, "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and he wept bitterly. We'll be getting into that next week when we get into the rancher story of that. So this is just kind of a heads up of what's going to be coming. But that's the story. That's the story about Peter denying Jesus 3 times. Your rancher book said he denied Jesus 3 or 4 times. But anyway, are you there?
Like Peter's saying that he didn't deny him, but he's admitted to denying him. So is this the real Peter?
I don't think you're really prepared today, Marissa.
I am.
I just don't.
I actually have been here listening to the story.
Sounds like you're too distracted.
No, I'm not distracted at all. I'm actually I'm just curious about why there's so many Peters, like right there. I mean, Jesus is right here.
Well, then talk to Jesus.
I am.
What does Jesus say?
So he says, "As we step into this field today, we bring unto you a story. The story of the arrest, the story of my capture, where details that come through are truth." It says, "But think of a story that's told with no details. No one will remember it. So a story must be told with these details, and the story must be told so that people can remember it." So he's telling me, like, pick the Bible or the Urantia book, what we're asking questions about, because it's like the Bible is.
I don't like asking him questions. I never really get straight answers.
Exactly.
Whenever I ask a question, I never get a straight answer. I never get a straight answer. I don't know whether that's because your lack of ability or whether I'm just asking questions that aren't fitting the moment.
He's saying,
I don't know.
He's saying what's truth is truth, and the energy that comes through is what the truth is, and that is that there was a fight, and that there were. It's almost like he doesn't want to answer questions, because then that'll take people that believe in the Bible, and I'll take them out of belief of that. And then the story with this, he's saying the story supports what was happening, what happened to him, the arrest, and his ultimate demise. You know, him passing and then rising again, and doesn't want to take from that. Is what he is saying. He's standing right behind me with his hands like on my shoulders.
I can understand that.
Yeah,
I can understand that.
It's almost like he doesn't want to take from the story, and he doesn't want to add to the story, because then that makes the story almost unbelievable. He wants everyone to believe the story, because ultimately he died and rose, and that's the thing that human beings can't believe could ever happen, is a person that has passed away rises again. But and that's just what he wants to support. They really don't have anything to add today, other than the fact that there's really nothing to add. It's just the you guys have anything to add? No, they don't really have anything to add. It's not me being unprepared. It's just they don't really have anything to add. The story.
Okay.
Well, let's wrap it up. Wrap it up for 2022. We're already well over an hour and a half now into this. So anyway, I'll just let's
John
just
wants to
say
say
Happy New
something,
Year,
and
everybody. Go out and
Rosemary's scoffing at him, but John says in the new year, and John always wants to foretell the future, but John's saying in the new year, the new year will bring the new year will bring that which you wanted to bring to you. So walking into this new year, walking into this new age, ask yourself, what do I want to leave behind and what do I want to bring into the future? Ask to be inside of Christ, not ask Christ in, but ask to be inside of Christ, live in Christ, and all the things that you're wanting to bring into your life will come to you. All those things that you want to leave behind will be left behind because your mind says this year is over. So allow your mind to take with this year the things that you do not want to bring with you. Understand that it is a fresh start. It is a renewing for the first 3 weeks of the new year. Understand these first 3 weeks are our time to release the past and let in the future as you want it to be. So remembering that you only can see what you want to see. So ask Christ to allow you to see more than you have ever seen before, not necessarily spirits or energy, but to see life from a different perspective. We bless you and bid you adieu. That's it.
well,
So
let's
he's
see
saying
what happens.
ask to be given a bigger perspective on life. Ask to be able to ask to step into and live in Christ, and ask to be able to see the things that you've never been able to see before, in as far as perspectives and your relationships with people, and just be open-minded and ask that anything that you don't want just be taken away and have it dissolved and released and crucified, so that the new resurrected you in this new year can be a brand new one. And that was Jesus, the very end. That was Christ. Yeah, that was Michael. Sorry,
Oh,
Yeshua.
okay.
It was Yeshua. And my dog just started freaking out outside, going yip how as soon as I started channeling.
I think you got a lot of other people's energy all around you right now. So next time we get together, try to get away from everybody at least an hour.
I left
Have
the house.
your tripod all set up, everything set up. So when we come together, you go right on. Not setting everything up and saying
I
you
did have
just
it
got
set up, but it
there
kept going
from
to the
your
wrong
home.
phone.
And I know. But
Phone.
now you know which phone. This happened before. You haven't been able to get on. When you use that Intuition Living phone, it doesn't work.
Oh really? See,
Doesn't work.
I never remember anything, so I don't ever remember that. From like 4 o'clock until like 5:30, I'm like, I don't remember anything. I watch the shows again and I go, oh, okay. But yeah, I have this set up ready to go. But it's this other phone that gives me issues. This one right here. So anyway, I'll
Okay.
know now. Just use this phone. And who am I logged in as? Marissa Morris or Answers or what?
It was both. This time there was two Marissa Morrises, but in the
And two Peters
past, whenever
and two
whenever
everything
it
that's
shows whenever it shows Intuition Living or something like that, can't get you on. It says, and one of those phones today said, nope, can't get you in, but the other one did.
it's always
But
just
it
interference.
got you in on the audio, but not on the video.
Yeah.
So anyway,
It,
okay, I'm done.
it's
I'm
just
done.
interference.
I prepared for a good hour and a half before coming on, and now I've done another hour and a half. So
Perfect.
my 3 hours of the day is done.
Okay. Everyone,
And
happy New
I
Year,
just
everybody. Who's on
yeah
here right now? There's 7 or 9 people on here right now, which is it's a lot for
yeah we don't get a lot. We
hello
don't get a
everyone.
lot of
Happy New Year. Be safe. Be safe, and we'll see you in the new year with the rest of the story, right? So I'm glad your
yeah.
back is better.
We still have quite a bit. We still have quite a ways to go.
But your back
And
is better. Your back is better, I heard.
yeah,
Yay!
my
Yay!
back is better. So I'm
Yay.
real happy about that. I can be a normal person
John
again.
says because that's when you are inside of Christ. When you are in Christ, in your Christ body, that's when you do not have pain. It's when we fall into the past or worry about the future, or we just go into the old us. That's what we have to crucify, release that piece of us, and then step back into our Christ body. And that's what you're living in with no pain. And how you get into that, whether it be sleeping on different sides or whatever you're receiving, whatever messages, he says those messages, you follow them and then you're back into Christ again. So whether it's that earthbound spirit that I released from me that knocked you out of your Christ body or whatever, because your pain started the day I got that earthbound spirit out of my field. Who knows? But either way, you're better. So that's great. It's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, happy New Year, everyone. Be very, very, very safe out on the roads and everything, and remember to live in Christ. That's what they keep saying. Just remember, be in Christ. And on New Year's Eve, even if you're out celebrating, be in Christ. Be in Christ's body. You don't have to be like super holy and like not say bad things or whatever. But when you're in Christ, you'll be safe, and you'll only want to do the things that embellish your life rather than take from your life. And that's it. So. Everyone have a great night. I love you, Papa, and I will. I'll see you on Monday if I don't talk to you before that. Okay? I'll call
Yeah, I'll be
you.
back in Los Cocos, and yeah, so just be prepared before you're going to come on.
I was
Don't be in the
prepared.
middle of your car walking in and setting up your. Yeah, that's very frustrating.
I
It's
really was
frustrating
prepared.
not only for me, but it's frustrating for people waiting on you as
And
well. So
the
I don't know.
dark side. It is the dark side because I was completely set up and I left my family and I sat here for an hour and listened and I was set up and it's just that dog is going nuts.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, no, I was set up. It's the electronics. They always do this and it's a way to trip things up and irritate people. But hopefully everyone's stuck in there and hung in there for the message and it is what it is.
Okay.
So anyways, okay.
All right.
I
Well,
will.
be safe. Have a happy New Year, and we'll see each other again. If not sooner, we'll see each other on
Yeah,
Monday.
perfect.
We'll
I'll be
do
here.
this again.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Love you
Pooh. See
guys.
you later.
Love you,
Love you too.
Papa. All right. Tell Tanya and Drew Happy New Year, and I'll see you guys all soon. Okay.
I will.
All
I'll
right.
do that. All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. I can't get off here. This is not okay. Bye.
Okay, folks. That does it for 2022. Listen, have a very safe and happy New Year. And this story just gets more and more interesting. And we have finally gotten to the point where Jesus has been arrested. And we'll get back into the story again on Monday, God willing. Everything will be fine. And we're going to get into his trial. And then we'll get into um, the Rancha Book story of Peter. And we just went through the tail end of Matthew 26 and what happened with Peter and turning, denying Christ 3 times. But curious to see how that's going to be handled in the Rancha account. But in the meantime, we're coming up on the weekend, so have a very good weekend. Be very, very safe tomorrow night if you're going out. And let's just hope for a better year. This year has just been, the world has gone nuts, just nuts, just crazy. So let's hope some miracles happen. I still want the white horse to come riding in. The white horse has got to come in and save us from all this stuff that's going on and it's affecting all of us. But in the meantime, keep Christ and it's his spirit in your heart and do the will of the Father. Just do the will of the Father. That's what Jesus was here to teach. So again, Joe Morris with Answers Heaven Speaks. Have a great weekend. Happy New Year, everybody. And I'll catch you on the second day of 2023. So take care. See you then. Bye-bye.